Hi, welcome back to Economics, and we will be discussing agrarian reform in this chapter. Um, why do we have to discuss agrarian reform? First of all, this is actually mandated by our constitution that agrarian reform, together with economics and taxation, should be, also together with the life of Jose Rizal, should be taught in schools, okay, or should be part of the curriculum. That is why agrarian reform is included. So, agrarian reform, the this is actually a century-old issue, meaning many centuries na, it's still an issue. Okay, which this one started way back from the Spanish time until the American colonial period. Okay, so according nga kang Constantino, ang agrarian reform daw is a promise that is used most of the time by the politicians, especially ka ng mga presidential candidates. They use this in their campaigns, promising agrarian reform, but most of the time they are sidelined, napasantabi na lang, nakalimutan. Sa pa na siya, di wala na madunggan after sa election. So this is the most promised program by many generations na. Actually, since 1896, katong Katipunan uprising, it has been the major demand, no, of the Filipinos. So, sugod ato, the successive administration, katong mga nisunod nga mga administration, starting from Quezon to Cory Aquino, they have tried to implement different agrarian reform programs. However, all of these government reforms were perceived to be ineffective. So, dili siya effective, and it was only seen as a matter of kanang sugar coating or pampalubag loob na lang. They are empty promises to the farmers, and instead, giprotektahan lang daw sa agrarian reform ang mga landlords, ang interes sa mga landlords. No, so these are the perception of the majority. So kadtong mga nagsulong or mga advocates of genuine agrarian reform, particularly kadtong mga farmers, they actually do not ask for absolute equality nga kanang yung bahinon gyud nga absolute. What they just want is uh, the equity, no, equity, not equality. So they just need the portion of land that they kanang kaya nila nga bungkalon, so that they will be able to feed themselves. Right? So mao na siya agrarian reform. So there are essential concepts that we are going to discuss. The reform, the land reform, and the agrarian reform. Reform is a change. It's a change or a process or an act to achieve improvements on any current state or quality. So reform gani, meaning to the betterment, di ba? Murag kung unsa makakaron, dapat pag nag-reform ka should be above or more than what you are right now. So that's reform. Pag mintag land reform, kanini siyang this is something done so that there's a good relationship between the farmers o katong mga nagbungkal sa yuta and the owners of the land. And agrarian reform is the bigger, broader concept, no, because it does not only talk about the ownership of the land, but it also talks about the agrarian system and the process as whole. So pag tag process or system kana ng unsa mga suporta ang gihatag para sa mga agrarian uh, lands, or naabay infrastructure, naabay pondo, no, naabay support nga gihatag ang gobyerno. So that's the agrarian reform, no, the whole package ni siya. Okay, so what is agrarian reform? During the Aquino, actually the during the Aquino administration, naa sila gi-create nga Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program or CARP nga gitawag, which was initialized from the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law or CARL, or simply Republic Act number 6657. And kining a program or ang CARP was actually signed by President Cory Aquino on June 10, 1988, and it was effective as of June 15, 1988. Now, this program aims to rationalize the distribution and use of all lands suitable for agriculture, and also to bring social equity and economic prosperity. So there should be a social equity. So nindot kay ang purpose gyud sa Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program or CARP. Um, Specifically, ang pinaka-purpose gyud ani is to uplift the living conditions of the farmers by making them more independent, self-reliant, and to be the source of genuine strength of the Philippines. Ganun may matag genuine strength because Philippines is an agricultural country, and because if it's an agricultural country, ang ato yung pinaka force yun will be coming from the agriculture sector, which are the farmers. Okay, so dapat mahatagan nilag strength. So mo na siya purpose nga nung na ay agrarian reform. So but agrarian reform is not only talking about the ownership, as I've mentioned. Agrarian reform this is a development program that is supported by the different government agencies. So dili lang ang Department of Agriculture ang involved ani. There are several government agencies that are working towards implementing the genuine agrarian reform. And it is also a package to support services, no, of support services. So meaning support services na di ang price regulation. So mo nang ang gobyerno mag-set siya og price sa mga agricultural products. Then assistance on matters related to legal aid. So kana bitang na mga tenants nga naay kaso against their landowners. So mag-provide ang government og legal assistance, consultation, counseling, and most importantly, the government should also provide assistance in building of infrastructure that would benefit the farmers. So naanang mga farm to market road, mga ingana siya nga tipo. Because so that the farmers are able to bring their products easily to the market. Okay? And aside from that, this is also an intervention not only limited to the concerns of land use and distribution, but also engage in other related concerns like the economic, social, and political issues. Diba? So kung ma-address ni siya nga mga issues, or these issues should be addressed by the agrarian reform. So, which we will be discussing next. Okay, so we have principles of agrarian reform. So there are three principles that the agrarian reform is built upon. One is social justice, second is just compensation, and then third is legal and moral duty. So agrarian reform can be found in the 1987 Philippine Constitution, and also can be found in several papal social encyclicals or papal memorandums, no. So dili lang siya naa sa constitution, kundi pati ang church gi-acknowledge na siya. They identify the basic principle of any agrarian reform as social justice. Social justice means that the democratization of income and wealth is realized by giving the marginalized farmers an equal access to land as their basic productive resource. So ingon sila ang democratization daw of income and wealth, ang pagkapantay-pantay sa income and sa wealth, ma-realize lang na siya if the marginalized farmers are given equal access to the land. No, naalay magkaroon lang siya social justice if they are given equal access. So another principle in the implementation of agrarian reform is just compensation for the landowners. So this is for the landowners. The fair market value should be considered in assessing the lands to be redistributed. So, meaning, pag mingon tag fair market, kung unsa yung actual nga value ana ang yuta, mura bag paliton sa gobyerno and then since ni agree ang landowner nga i-distribute niya ang yuta sa iyang mga saop, so therefore tagaan siya just compensation. So unsa tong fair market value ana nga yuta mo to ihatag sa landowner para lang musugot sila nga i-distribute. The principal players in agrarian reform include not only the farmer beneficiaries but also the affected landowners. Together, they will work with the concerned government agencies in the preparation, planning, and implementation of the program. No, so mao na siya. And legal and moral duty. So the affected landowners and landlords must share with the landless tillers the lands they have acquired and benefited from over the years, and they should shift toward industrialization and other entrepreneurial activities. Okay, so kadtong um, mga landowners, they have the legal and the moral duty to do that. So if may mga cases nga ang mga land dili ma-distribute, so they should shift to industrialization and other entrepreneurial activities para mas dako ang kita sa piece of land and dako pud ang makita sa mga farmers. So manay legal and moral duty. Okay, so what are the aspects of agrarian reform? Because the aspects of the agrarian reform will actually explain why there is a need for an authentic and aggressive agrarian reform in the Philippines. So first aspect is economic. Since the end of World War II, ang kadtong mga economic development and progress or the economic development and progress is the concern of all countries. Kaya ang World War II, diha man tong murag, there are so many cities that were destroyed. So ang aim nila after World War II is for economic development, no? And there are some like most Asian countries, they were successful in propelling their economic strategies and goals, while there are others that are still trying, no? Dili pa sila successful and they're still dreaming to achieve the economic development. And the Philippines is one of those countries. We're still dreaming. Okay. Essentially, ang gatong nasa agriculture sector, like the farmers, farm workers, that struggle for a long-term economic development. So sila tong mga nag-struggle gyud because of walay agrarian reform. So agriculture man is the main industry in our country. So because we're agricultural country. In fact, ang kanang dako kaay nga portion sa atong working population ay naa sa agricultural sector, no? And they actually contributes substantially to the gross domestic product. Like for example kanang mga exports of agricultural products nato. So that's part of our GDP, di ba? And a large portion of our population is in the agricultural sector. So if mingon tag mahatagan na to economic freedom ang mga naa sa agricultural sector, so just imagine unsa na sila kadaghan. So meaning wala nay pobre dapat nga mabilin sa Pilipinas. However, at present, the Philippines has a very low level of agricultural productivity. So nganong naa may very low level of agricultural productivity? Una, there are small sizes of farms. So mga ginagmay ra nga sizes of farms. And we have lack of finances for capital, poor technology or primitive methods of production, di ba? Sa mga advanced countries, ang mag-harvest sa ila machines na dili na mano-mano ang pag-harvest. Pag-harvest sa palay, sa mais, machines na ang ginagamit, na sila mga equipment. Economic ignorance. So napagyoy kanang mga tinuuhan pagid ang paggamit sa pagtanom, madili magtanom pug bitay ang buwan, yung mga ingana bitaw nga mga tinuuhan. So napaghapon siya yung mga ingana because very primitive. Then lack of economic incentives. So kadtong mga nabitay mga government agencies karon, unlike karon kanang naay mga kanang mga coconut farmers ginahatagan silang mga incentive, ginahatagan silang mga libreng similya or naay mga pundong gihatag sa ilaha. So those are form of incentives, but not everyone are able to access to those incentives. And Filipinos are going out of the country to work. So nahurot na ta, nag-anam-anam nagawa sa mga Pilipino out of the country because there are more opportunities, more work, and higher pay outside of the Philippines. Lastly, many of the farmers and farm workers do not own the land they till. So, ngano man ning isa man siya ka kuan, isa siya sa reason because mawad-an magud sila og gana, especially if sa up ka niya, mawad-an ka gana to do more because you do not gain from what you uh, did, no? Dili dako ang imong incentive nga madawat kay ang mas dako nga portion isa tag-iya man sa yuta. Okay? So, with all this, ang nakita is ang agrarian reform gyud ang dapat makasolve ani. Agrarian reform is the key in propelling the Philippines to its irreversible economic development. So kung maunang naka form of comprehensive agrarian reform law, it's because of this. So another aspect is socio-cultural. So ag- agrarian reform implies a socio-cultural transformation that could eventually result in meaningful changes in the lives of its beneficiaries, which are the farmers. So, based on the experiences of other countries like Japan and Taiwan, they have implemented no models of agrarian reform, and they get the positive and favorable sociocultural changes. And these are the changes that they observe. Okay, number one, a gradual shift from the dependent to a self-subsistent outlook where the farmer beneficiaries put all their energies in the farms, resulting in surplus and an increase in income. Okay, so because of the because if mahatagan og agrarian reform, true, genuine agrarian reform, ang mahitabuan na is they will gradually shift from um, the self-subsistent kana bitong nagtanom ra ko gamay kay para lang sa amoa. Mo shift na siya nga pananaw to the kana bitong mahimo na siyang dependent nga mag-produce na siya daghan that will increase the his or her income. Okay, so dili na lang nga gamay ra among itanom pang konsumo ra ni namo kay wa man gihapoy mo palit. So if there's an agrarian reform which is including mga support, um, i-bridge sa gobyerno ang farmers ug ang buyers, so ma-encourage siya no nga mo produce so that they can increase the income. Another is an enhanced social order in farming villages and the farmers becoming more aware of the importance and urgency of maintaining peace and stability in the community for them to enjoy the increased benefits from their farms. Okay, so dapat na ay social order no sa mga farming villages. Wala nang mga away-away sa yuta, kaso-kaso sa yuta because that is going to take a very long time pag nagkaso mo regarding sa yuta. So there should be peace so that there will be economic uh, benefits nga makuha after. And the third one is the farmer beneficiaries initiative and active participation in leadership roles apparent in the forming of associations and exercising of their suffrage right, and the decline of the landlord's monopoly to land ownership. So with the agricultural reform, ang kadtong mga farmer beneficiaries will become active sa mga leadership roles. And ang kadtong mga land owners, they will not no longer be able to monopolize sa land ownership because ma-distribute naman with the agrarian reform, ma-distribute ang lands to the farmers. So dili na ang landlords ang makamonopolize, and the farmers will be able to actively participate in leadership roles. Kaya mao man gud ni mga nahimong problema. If walay agrarian reform, ang mahimong problema manggod is kadtong support nga ihatag sa gobyerno like pautang nga mga seedling, pautang nga abono, they are actually not given to the ordinary farmers. They go to the usually kanang mga naay mga yuta, dagkog yuta, mga landowners, no, dili sa mga tenants. Okay, so with agricultural reform, mo ni siya ang mahitabo. Number four, the uplifted social status of the farmers brought about by the agricultural productivity, increasing their income, the promoting of improvements like modern family planning programs, and the awareness of economic alternatives in the urban and industrial sectors. So their social status are going to be uplifted, no, pag they are able, if they are given the ownership of the land, so the land is distributed, they are going to be encouraged to plant more, to produce more. They will be able to lead, to participate in leadership, and they will also be having an their social status will be uplifted. So that is going to be beneficial to the farmer beneficiaries. Okay, so that's the socio-cultural. Now the religious part. Um, Agrarian reform actually be seen in the Bible, both in the Old and New Testaments, and this is also being discussed in the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church through their papal social encyclicals, which are encyclicals is kanang memorandum memo na siya. So you can actually see these verses, no, Genesis 1:127, the Vatican Decree, and the Papal Encyclical. So all of these actually talk about agrarian reform and how it will be able to uplift the situation of the farmers. And then the moral, no, moral aspects of agriculture. So philosophical teaching also shows the importance of agrarian reform to a country. And because the reason behind that is that agrarian reform is actually based on social justice as far as equitable distribution of land is concerned. Okay, so pag mayroong general justice, mo ng responsibility of treating the rich and the poor equally. Distributive justice, this underlines the duty of the government to ration proportionately to all citizens the privileges and burdens in the society. So dili lang dapat ang mga poor, ang mga farmers ang naglisod, no, nagtrabaho maayo, but it should be equal, or there should be equity on the burden and the privileges. So, mo gani nang naatay ang justice bitaw, blindfolded na siya so that wala dapat kipabor-paboran. Riyan na siya. Okay, and legal aspect of the agrarian reform. So agrarian reform is mandated again by the Constitution, which is the 1987 Constitution, and it clearly states that, so there are several articles here. Article 2, Section 10, to promote social justice in all phases of national development. Article 2, Section 21, to promote comprehensive rural development and agrarian reform. Article 12, Section 1, to promote industrialization and full employment based on sound agricultural development and agrarian reform. Article 13, Section 2, to regulate acquisition, ownership, use, and disposition of property and its increments. Article 13, Section 2, to afford full protection to labor and promote equal work opportunities. And lastly, Article 13, Section 4 to 10, to undertake an agrarian reform program as well as housing programs for homeless citizens. Okay, so this is the legal um, aspects of agrarian reform. Lastly, we have the political aspect. So, political aspect involves the government. So, agrarian reform should be the top priority now of the government and of almost every Philippine president. So, it should be the top priority. Di yun na siya dapat ma-sideline or makalimtan. Agrarian reform is ultimately the product of the more deliberate political decisions in solving the imbalanced ownership of agricultural lands with the privileged few who benefited from them through wielding power and influence. So dapat daw na ay deliberate or done consciously, no? It should be done consciously, political decision to solve the imbalance ownership. So that's the political aspect of agrarian reform. What are the implications of agrarian reform? We have three implications: socio-economic, socio-political, and socio-cultural. So all of these are actually, uh, you can find these aspects or the the what do you call that? The descriptions can be found in one or two um, of the implications or conclusion. So generally, the agrarian reform will be able to help or provide social justice to the farmers. No, na socio-economic implication, socio-political, and socio-cultural. So the common here is that there will be a heightened quality of life. No, so heightened quality of life meaning um, they are able to provide for themselves. They are able to eat three times a day. They're able to send their kids to school. They're able to buy clothes. They have their own house to protect them. No, they are able to buy medicines when they are sick. So, mo na siya, quality of life. So that's actually it. That's all about the agrarian reform program.